The conversation that matters isn't the one between Ukraine and Russia, because Russia is never going to provide security for Ukraine. That's not the point. The way Ukraine gets security is through negotiations with its partners in the West. That has until recently included the United States. That may no longer include the United States, but it does include the UK. It does include the rest of Europe. And I think part of this from the Ukrainian side is to buy a little bit more time for those negotiations to take shape and for Europe to get its act together in providing a more robust security arrangement and security guarantees that would deter further Russian aggression.
And what chance is there for a breakthrough in the war in Ukraine? Vladimir Putin has failed to turn up to peace talks in Istanbul so far anyway, the first in 3 years. There are delegations there from both sides, but without either the Russian president or indeed Donald Trump in the room, is there really any point? Will there be any progress? Let's speak to Professor Sam Greene. He's Director for Democratic Resilience at the Centre for European Policy Analysis. What's going to happen today, if anything? And is this actually just required to, at the very least, get the ball rolling after 3 years, Sam?
Well, look, I mean, if you are going to have a conversation, you've got to start somewhere, and delegations aren't inherently a bad place to do it. It is sort of an odd situation, in fact, to imagine that you would start peace negotiations with the principals, with the presidents and the heads of state. It's much more typical to let the diplomats and the functionaries really get things teed up so that the principals can then knock it out of the park when things are ready. So on some level, it's not terribly surprising, except that really what's missing here is a sense of, is Russia really interested in this process, right? And I think the message that we've gotten, both from, Putin taking a very long time to decide whether he was going to go, and then from the composition of this delegation, which is capable of talking but isn't capable of making decisions. It's really hard to see how this meeting is going to be about anything other than posturing.
And within that posturing, is there any chance, do you think, there can be any substantive progress? And what are the issues that are on the table here, the sort of key ones? We know, of course, there has to be peace in Ukraine. At the end of it, we're aware of the fifth of Ukraine that is currently occupied by Russia. What do you think will be the initial positions and perhaps the initial asks in these negotiations?
Well, the first question is really whether the Ukrainians, with American help, if the Americans decide to help, can get the Russians off of their talking points. Because the position that the Russians have taken is to say, we want everything that we wanted at the beginning of the war, which is maybe not necessarily all of Ukrainian territory, but we want Ukraine to acquiesce to Russian control of the territory that they hold. They want Zelensky out of power. They want demilitarization. They want guarantees that Ukraine never joins NATO and probably never joins the European Union. And they want guarantees that the West will not support Ukraine further. Right? The way it was talked about was that they want to talk about, the original causes of this war, which they say are, Ukrainian fascism and militarization, both of which are really quite fantastical. They're conversation stoppers rather than conversation starters. Look, if I'm frank, though, the conversation that matters isn't the one between Ukraine and Russia, because Russia is never going to provide security for Ukraine. That's not the point. The way Ukraine gets security is through negotiations with its partners in the West. That has until recently included the United States. That may no longer include the United States, but it does include the UK. It does include the rest of Europe. And I think part of this from the Ukrainian side is to buy a little bit more time for those negotiations to take shape and for Europe to get its act together in providing a more robust security arrangement and security guarantees that would deter further Russian aggression.
Sam, thank you. That's Professor Sam Greene, Director for Democratic Resilience at the Centre for European Policy Analysis.
Devam ediyor. Kapandı da.
In the middle of the two of us. Okay.
More you can do. All military aid now will help Ukraine.
If you are a software engineer, you could be working in a software units.
And do you expect F-16 to arrive soon?
Since the situation is always dynamic, at the moment, commitment doesn't constitute delivery. 50% of commitments are not delivered on time. So which means that in the mathematics of war, we look to the enemy. Their economy is almost 2 trillion. They use up to 15% official and unofficial budget to the war, which constitutes over 150 billion US dollars. So annually, it's officially. So basically, whatever committed that doesn't come on time, will lose people, will lose territories.
So, Minister Umerov, the Rustam, it's great to have you here at NATO headquarters.